And, Chris, one thing that makes it a lot easier for the Vikings to try to do that is the fact that they will be operating not under the rules of the last year of the prior CBA, but the rules of the first year of the new one. That was the headline from over the weekend. Late Saturday into Sunday, the voting ended on the CBA, and by mid-morning Sunday, we learned that the players had voted to ratify the new collective bargaining agreement by a very narrow margin. 1,019 yes, 959 no. 60 votes was the difference, 79% turnout. It should have been higher than that given the stakes for all players. Still, nearly 80%, nearly 4 out of 5 cast a ballot. And, Chris, I'm convinced after everyone I've spoken to, this thing was dead before what happened last week. And once the players realized that the world has changed and the deal on the table would not be put on the table right now after the coronavirus situation really, caused the public health crisis, created an economic downturn, the owners would not have put that deal on the table. So they grabbed it. And it was the late voting from players who recognized we got to grab this deal now while we can. That pushed it over the top.
Yeah, it seems that way. First off, didn't we bet a steak dinner on how close this would be? I think I'm like 2 or 3 dinners in the hole, but I thought we bet a steak dinner on, how close it was going to be. And I think I won that vote, just to let you know, just to remind you.
Let me tell you, once life gets back to the point where we can actually go out and have a steak dinner, I will buy you an entire side of beef. All right. So, sorry, Kristen. Kristen's got to bleep that. But hey, I can't wait to buy you all the steak dinners because that will mean that a lot of things have turned out the right way. I'm with you there. I look forward to those days too. But I do agree with you and heard the same things that I think, yes, the Corona scare and everything that's going on in our world certainly swayed votes in the favor of yes. And, ultimately, hey, are there things that I don't love about this new CBA? Certainly. But as an ex-player and somebody that always seemed, I always favor the players, as you do. I think there was more positives in it to get done from the Players Association standpoint than negatives. And it was never going to be perfect. And I understand some of the concerns. Listen, some of my ex-teammates, me, myself, annual medical benefits, they're going to drop down, certainly. But I'm willing to take that. I played in an era where, there was big money thrown around. And I also realized that, guys like my dad's teammates in the 80s and 70s and early 90s are falling apart and have no medical help. So I'm glad to see them get a little piece of this pie as well. And I'm just glad a deal came about, and we're going to have football next year, and we can kind of end this nonsense. Yeah, and look, I don't know what was going to happen if this deal was voted down. The owners very likely may have said, we're not negotiating any further until we can fully assess the damage to our broader portfolios from the COVID-19 crisis, and we'll get back to you. And, of course, anything that they lose elsewhere, they'll try to make back from their football interest. That was the concern. And ultimately, at the end of the day, the players lack the ultimate weapon in the arsenal, which is the willingness to take a work stoppage, whether it's a lockout, whether it's a strike. We saw it in 1987 before many of the players in the NFL were even born. Most of the players weren't born in 1987. They don't understand the dynamics. D. Smith did, and I think if he did anything that wasn't optimal, he wasn't able to explain to them where this was going to end up and that the deal they have now is as good or better than the deal they're going to get later. So just do the deal now. And I think it's hard to explain that to football players. I think that they have their opinions, and they are strong opinions, and sometimes logic and common sense won't get through because they are used to being very binary, very black and white. And once they make up their mind, they make up their mind. So it was not easy to get these guys on the same page. Enough of them were on the same page to push this through, and now we have labor peace. We don't know what else we have, but we have labor peace through 2030. And also, Chris, one other point I need to make, and you and I have discussed this before, there will be dramatic relaxation of the marijuana rules to your chagrin. You wish it was like that when you were in the league. But I saw Josh Gordon's name trending yesterday on Twitter because people think he's back in now. That's not how it's going to work.
The reinstatement rules have not changed. If you're out, you still have to jump through all the same hoops to get back in. The commissioner still has sole discretion to make that decision. There's no requirement under the policy as to when he has to make that decision. So he's got to dot every I, cross every T, and hope that the commissioner lets him back in. And when he gets back in, he's still facing another banishment, because any violation, once you've been reinstated from that banishment, will get you banished again. It's far different from the guys who aren't suspended. The guys who aren't suspended, you can never be suspended for a positive test. For Josh Gordon, Chris, it is never going to be that easy, and that applies to Randy Gregory. That applies to David Irving. That applies to Martavis Bryant. That applies to anyone else who is currently suspended. You are not automatically getting back in, and once you get back in, you much more easily can be thrown back out than any other player.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I am glad to see the relaxed laws or rules as far as this is concerned. I mean, yeah, you know my thoughts there. First off, I mean, come on. You know, marijuana at this point we know is about as arbitrary as going home and drinking a beer or two, right? Which just about everybody does in their profession. And then, of course, you know, with football, as brutal as it is, as physically demanding as it is, you know, many times I've told you, I have teammates who got, you know, stuck in the opioid wormhole because of pain and things like that. And marijuana is a great replacement for opioid replacements to make the body feel better that way. Now, you know, as far as the reinstatement stuff with some of those guys, like, hey, you know, I don't know how I feel about it, I guess, to a degree. One, all right, for a case like Josh Gordon, you know, there's a lot of things there to where he's had a lot of issues, and he's said this himself, to where, yeah, I do feel like somebody's got to protect him here when you've had this many issues go on through your life, and the NFL wants to see him go through it. But, you know, some of the other guys, I don't know, I guess I feel a little weird that they have to go through this whole process and nobody else is going to have to go through it, you know, ever again, really.
Yeah, and look, I think that they were forgotten in the negotiation, because when I asked D. Smith about it 2 weeks ago when we interviewed him, he said I'd have to look into that and get back to you. I asked him specifically about the standards that will apply to the guys who are currently suspended. So I think they just were overlooked by both sides. And now these guys are going to continue to be in this weird purgatory where the commissioner is the only one who decides whether or not you can get back in.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like that. And I would hope that the NFLPA would argue, like, hey, listen, the guys where it's just strictly marijuana, all right, let's just let them back in. Let's do it. Now, if there's the guys who have had other issues to go along with it, and maybe more serious drugs, all right, and other issues that way, then, you know, I understand maybe a delay in the reinstatement and reevaluating, because we got to help these guys out too. And as we know, some of these drugs can just be so addicting that they can overtake human beings that way. So I wish that just the purely marijuana guys would just be allowed in. And, you know, we'll do a little more research on the guys who maybe have more severe problems than that.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.